I always have to wait 10 seconds before starting. Just going to wait a couple of minutes before we officially start, but good morning to those people who are joining us for our event. Give people to 10:01 to join before we kick off, but I promise I will keep to time because I know people are both experiencing Zoom fatigue, but also have managed to get their diaries so much that they end up on so many of these anyway. So we'll start as we are at 10:01. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to SEC Newgate's event on the German 2021 federal elections, particularly with a focus on the future of Anglo-German and UK-EU relations without Angela Merkel. I'm Tiffany Burrows, Head of Trade within SEC Newgate's advocacy practice. And before I kick off by introducing our fantastic panel, I just wanted to run through a few housekeeping bits. You will have noticed that this session is being recorded. I will be sharing the discussion for around half an hour, and then we will open up the floor to questions. If you could pop your questions in the chat box, when we get to that section of the discussion, I will call on you and you'll be asked to unmute. You won't be able to come onto camera, but the panelists will be able to hear you. So without further ado, as we have an awful lot of topics to cover, I want to introduce, first of all, Christian Elson, who is a political consultant for the German ministries and authorities, and he is the managing director of Cool in Berlin, and he was previously the co-founder of TV station Phoenix. Tanja Schuler is the managing director of SEC Newgate Germany, formerly Cole PR and managing director of Orca Affairs. She has extensive experience in public affairs and communications across Germany for a variety of companies, including Coca-Cola. Alex Altman is a partner and head of the German desk at Blick Rothenberg and chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce in Germany. And last but not least, Sabina Tilsley is Deputy Head of Trade here at SEC Newgate UK. She's a British-German dual national and has extensive knowledge in EU and UK politics, having worked in public affairs in Bremen, Brussels and London. So I will kick off, if that is okay, by asking each of our panelists to give a perspective of what is going on in Germany at the moment. What can we expect from the elections now they are just under 3 weeks away? And for those on the call that aren't as familiar with how the election and the system works, if you could touch on that, that would be great. So I'll start with you, Christian.
Hi, thank you. I think we had a very strong impact from the Green Party in 6 months before the election. So it was the end of April. We had a survey result of like 28% for the Greens. That was unimaginable before in Germany. And at the same time, the government party, CDU, had like 22%, and the SPD was coming with 13%. 13, that is less than the half than the Greens had. Yeah. So that was a very, very, very new impact, because we never had like a strong kind of, let's say, radical movement. They were growing out of a radical movement. Just to make clear, like they came out of a peace movement, out of an anti-nuclear movement. So especially the old economy were very worried what would happen if they would come after Merkel as the leading government party. And so there was a lot of trouble coming up, especially for the industrial economy. So that was a strong impact. So we still have it. The results now are totally different. We had a really strong changes in Germany at the survey results. But still, the impact, you can feel it.
Thanks, Christian. I'm sure we'll touch on the role of the Greens and how that plays out in potential coalitions. But Tanja, can you give us a view of what you think, where things are heading and what you think we can expect?
Yeah, I think that this elections is really significant elections. And they are also considered in Germany as trend-setting. As you know, we have an ending of Merkel's era of 16 years of governing, and you still have to say that the majority of the Germans are very happy with her. They like her way of steady hand, as you say, of kind of being also very reliable in her political governing, in the international position and reputation that she has, and that she's also very much considered as the crisis manager for the Germans. So in Germany, we always said in the last years, or the people said, as long as we have Merkel, we can go calmly to bed tonight to sleep. And this is actually what the Germans, and this is a kind of a legacy that she also leaves, but I think we will discuss this as well. But you see that she leaves a kind of a gap. And if you have a look at what the critics say about her era, with all the positive things that she achieved, we also see that Germany faces challenges. And so this is considered a trend-setting election that we now have, where we see all the challenges on national as well as international level, like the climate change is a topic that really moves the people, the modernization, digitalization, the role of Germany in the world as leader in the EU, the impact of Corona, how can we recover the economy on a quick way. All this is actually something that is moving the people in Germany these days. And this election is important because it shows more or less like two directions. Everyone is clear, this is the things we have to approach. But on the other hand, the ways are different. So we have this rather left-wing ideas coming up with the Social Democrats and the Green parties and maybe the Left Party in a small way. But we also have, you know, like the conservative way together with the liberals, where we say it is all about transformation, of innovation, of modernization, and also a lot of differences in how we can solve the economic gaps by Corona. Tax increases is a big topic. Will we have them, or will we rather lower the taxes to give the economy a push? So the whole election is quite exciting. So we are really waiting for the next 2.5 weeks, what happens. And just as Christian said, it is an amazing development of the polls right now. The picture that we had in June, July was very different to now. Everyone thought maybe it's quite a boring election, that we just said, okay, the Conservatives will make it again, and it's just a question, will it be the Green parties or however the coalition will look like? And now within some weeks, all the polls just changed. As Christian just explained with the Green party, we also have this with the SPD coming from somewhere in the 10% up to 25 now, and the CDU, the Christian Democrats, just went down from safe 28% now, and yesterday's last poll below 20%. We never had that in Germany. So very exciting times, and I'm very excited to see the outcome then on the 26th of September.
So will we. We'll be watching this side of the continent. Alex, with everything that Tanya and Christian has said in terms of the lack of stability is not the right word, the unknown, right? Who is going to replace Merkel? How are UK and German businesses reacting to the election and the possibilities of the results?
Thank you, Tiffany. The UK and Germany have entered a new phase of their relationship after Brexit. Their diplomatic relationship, their economic relationship are to be redefined. And we all know that there is still a lot of work to do to make this new relationship work properly for business and for our people, to ensure we use the wealth of opportunities that our both countries have to offer. It is a test for any new government to redefine their relationship with their closest friends and allies. And that is why the federal elections in Germany, which will see a new head of government as a result, is so important. And as Christian has mentioned, there are some very big political topics to deal with after the election. Climate change and the German energy or power generation strategy, the old economy and the transition to a new clean economy. We hear from all politicians that these changes are only possible on an EU-wide level. So policies that include all EU member states to respond in the same or similar way. And the ultimate question for us in the UK is, and for UK businesses is, where are we in all of these upcoming changes? Because we are not part of any policy making decisions anymore in the EU. And that will be quite interesting to follow after the election as well.
Thanks, Alex. No, that is certainly something to be keeping an eye on. And Sabina, do you want to finish off the overview of where we are now in terms of, you and I have been talking about how much attention the election has been getting in the UK, and also obviously how that plays into the UK's wider global Britain strategy. So do you want to just touch on the view from the UK?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think people in the UK will definitely be looking at this election with a lot of interest. I mean, as everyone has already said, the significance of this election cannot be overstated. I mean, there are many people, young people in Germany, who have never known a different chancellor. Merkel has kind of been there throughout all of this time. I mean, my perspective is interesting as a dual national. I guess I always look at the sort of the two sides of the same coin. And so I'm really interested in seeing what will substantively change. And as somebody who has spent so much time analyzing Brexit, of course, what I'm keen to understand is, and I'm sure our other panelists will be able to explain this much better than I can, about what a new chancellor will actually bring to the dynamic of Europe, and what that will mean for international relations, including for Brexit policy. I mean, Germany has such a dominant position in the EU. It's almost unimaginable a new leader wanting to come in and change that. But at the same time, we've all talked already about so many of the challenges that are being faced that actually have to be tackled together. And there is a level of interconnectedness, not just across Europe, but also globally, that we haven't necessarily seen in this way before. I mean, climate is cross-border. All of us have spoken about this already. Trade is cross-border. Travel is now more complicated than it has been through the pandemic. Pandemic proofing has become an international exercise. Even the distribution of vaccines is now a conversation that is being had at a much more global scale, because it's all about our responsibility and how we help developing countries as well. And I think what Tanya mentioned already about the sort of money aspect of things is really important as well, because I think the different parties have different positions on how they want to interact with the EU. Now we still have a situation in which Germany will be incredibly powerful, but depending on what the coalition will look like, there might suddenly be tensions about what Germany's role in the EU looks like. And while I think there is an alignment on the indivisibility of what the EU is, and that has always been the tension in the Brexit debates around, you can't disentangle certain things around the single market, etc. But different parties will want to bring a different stance to what Germany will do on the EU stage, and also how that will define their relationship with the UK.
You've touched on a variety of different issues that are being played out in the election. This is probably, I'm going to ask Tanya first, but do you think domestic or foreign policy priorities are playing the bigger role in this, and what sort of themes are we seeing? Obviously, Sabina touched on the cross-border issues, and obviously that's something that UK are very much keeping an eye on. But at home in Germany, what are the dominant themes, and do you think they sit neatly into domestic or foreign policy camps?
Yeah, it's a bit like what I already mentioned. It is about domestic topics. It is about making Germany fit for the future. How can we secure our competitiveness internationally, and how can we make the best of how can we make us fit for the future? And we consider the 20th century as, one of the deciding decades that we have in front of us. And all the topics that are already mentioned, they are always combined with international perspective. So whatever we decide in Germany on climate change, it will not change so much if we do not get it on a European or worldwide level. The same is also with what is interesting for sure as well, as the whole digitalization and modernization. What we see in Germany is that we really have to catch up, but also on a European level. So there's a lot of initiatives that we say we really need to be more independent on digital infrastructure in Germany, but also and in Europe. And you know, probably the Gaia X project, which was one that was brought to life and shall be, you know, one of the milestones of where we want to go also in the digitalization modernization. Artificial intelligence is a key topic where we really want to make a next point and really catching up and being leader here. Just what Mr. Altmann already mentioned is the energy supply in Germany. When we really, and all the parties do confirm that the climate change is one of the top priorities. The big discussion goes around which way shall we go. So the one rather go on technology, others rather go on regulation and prohibition, if you like. But all are clear that the energy supply is one of the key tipping points, because when we want to change the industry and the way how we work and working on decarbonization, we do need new sources. And so this is also something that we cannot, you know, just solve on a national level. It is something international. A very other aspect is also what you mentioned, the role of Germany in Europe, but also in the international level regarding security issues. International as well as and so also the national security when it comes to terrorism, but also when it comes to, you know, intelligence in terms of terrorism, but also where do we go with the NATO, where do we go as partners, and where is the European budget on military expenses. This is also things that are discussed in these elections. And yeah, for first point, these points. So you see, it is just a mixture of domestic topics where we see the solution is rather on an international level. Yeah.
That's a really helpful overview. And obviously, in order to implement the different strategies to tackle those both domestic and international issues, obviously we need to know what the parties' platforms are. And in order, not just that, but we also need to know who we think is going to be the person leading that change within Germany. So you touched on the polls changing and also going down for the CDU as of yesterday, but also gradually over the summer. So Christian, I was wondering if you could touch upon we've heard a lot in the press about potential coalitions. So if you could just touch on what potential coalitions could look like, and therefore what that means in terms of the party platforms for all the issues that Tanya just mentioned. So for example, I was talking earlier about the variety of different names that are being assigned to the different parties coming together. So we've got Mickey Mouse, Jamaica, and Traffic Light, I think, are the three of my favorite potentials.
I would love to start like one step earlier. We have like a chance of 99% that we will have like 3 parties in the government this time. That is the first time in Germany that we will have a situation like that in the Bundes government, in the whole government, not in the states. In the states, that's a normal coalition situation right now. Many states have that, but for the whole Germany, that is very unusual. So that's also, we have like 3 candidates right now. That's also unusual. Normally we only had 2 of them. So we have like a triel, we call it in the TV discussions. So 3 people are like fighting for this job. Let's have a look at the candidates first, maybe. You know, there is Merkel she was of course from the Christian conservatives, but she was like, let's say, focused on the very middle of the society. She was not on a right wing, or she was like, for the conservatives, she was on a kind of left wing, so she was very close to the middle of the whole society. So if you see who is candidating for the conservatives now, that's also a candidate, Armin Laschet. He's also on the same like wing, or the same way to the middle. He is a leader of North Rhine-Westphalia, that is the biggest state in the German federal system. So he has a powerful support of his party normally. But there were lots of candidate fights in the party if there should come another kind of leader, or if we should continue with the policy of Merkel. And in the end, it was very close. But in the end, Armin Laschet won the game. So he is like standing for continuing the policy of Merkel. And the Social Democratic Party, we have the same thing. We have a for the left party, we have a very strong, like, right-wing candidate. So he's very leading to economy, leading to, he's the financial minister, he's the vice chancellor right now. So the Germans, they don't really like can understand what is the difference between them. So they see more the persons, more the slogans. But the difference between those two candidates is not that hard as in comparison in other countries, or in your country, Boris Johnson, or whatever. They are very close. So that's why I said the social impact, the strongest impact, are the Greens, because they will change a lot. That is a woman. She's just 40. She's not an old man, not an old white man. She's standing for a very like strong, powerful movements. Like, for example, we have like the Bild Zeitung is our sun in your country. That is the strongest, let's say, yellow press organ. And she like was not giving an interview right now. And that was a real big discussion because of course, she wants to have also the poorer people in the country for voting her. And that is like the newspaper they all read. So that has like millions of people looking at it. And they printed out an empty page and they just said like, she doesn't want to give us an interview. So that is a strong impact also. And she said, I will not go to Macron to show up like as a candidate. And I'm not doing, I'm not a chancellor right now. I don't need this support from foreign people. I don't need that. And both other candidates, they just like showed up like the candidates. That is a kind of advertisement, of course. Yeah. But she said, no, I want to stick to the policy. And especially like, of course, there's a theme like corruption. That was half a year ago. We had like many corruption cases in the Christian Democratic and the leading party. That was also a strong impact on people. So it is really changing a lot. we never had that much impact in Germany. We never had a coalition of three in the country, and we have like, and they are so close together now. You can't really see what is the survey result. Is it like for sure? Is it changing all the time? We don't know who's going to be the leader. And we had the last survey results in a state election that was so wrong. It was more than 10% wrong. We never had that in Germany. Normally the survey results, they are like, let's say 2% close to the election results. And now we had like a difference that more than 10% on each side. And that was, we never had that before. So everything is changing right now. That's what I want to say first.
And it's really interesting. And it's something that if we'd have had this event last week, we would have had a very different discussion in terms of where it was going. And I'm sure if we were to have this event next week or the following week, just before the election, I'm sure we'd also be having a different conversation. So I'm going to turn to Alex on what impact do you think Brexit and Germany's role within the EU is going to have on these elections? Or is it something that the UK is focusing on a bit too much, given the fact that it's very fresh for us, but probably the rest of the EU is trying to move on from?
Tiffany, if I could add one more point to what Christian has just said, just because I feel it's a very important point. This is the first time where a sitting chancellor is not running for re-election. So there is no bonus for an office holder, which is usually an advantage for the leading party in government. So the performance of the main candidates, and we have three, as Christian mentioned, is ever more important. And it looks like as minor mistakes during the campaign can have a very big impact. And I come to Brexit in a second. The CDU conservative candidate, Armin Laschet, has never come across as a very convincing candidate in my view. And his bets are clearly on the popularity of the governing CDU party and on Angela Merkel as a very popular outgoing chancellor. The management of the coronavirus crisis was very highly regarded by voters during the first wave last year. but then not so much anymore after the second wave. And the CDU suffered a lot in the polls because of that. So in summary, the Conservative Party, the CDU, has a weak candidate, which is Armin Laschet. The CDU also has suffered because of COVID and, of course, the Afghanistan crisis as well. And the CDU does not have the bonus of an office holder anymore. And it doesn't look very good for the CDU. The best bet for them is to win as many first voters as possible, so as many constituencies as possible, and then hope for an okay second vote share. We have a representational voting system in Germany, which is a bit different to what we have in the UK. So my prediction is they will end up at 24-25% of the vote share, which will probably be their worst result in history. But moving on to the Brexit question, how will Germany's role in the EU play out in the election campaign? To all of our surprise, EU-related topics haven't played a big role in the election at all. And I think that was very much because of the strong domestic issues like the flooding in Western Germany just a few weeks ago, which was related to climate change topics, very much a domestic topic, not an international topic. Germany's response to Afghanistan, very much a internal defense topic in Germany. And of course, the relations to the US because of that. We had Brexit just about 8-9 months ago. In the view of the German voters, the new free trade agreement was the best possible result. It has not played any role during this election campaign. However, if we look on the trade statistics, trade between Germany and the UK, and you have to notice that the UK is by far the most important export partner for Germany in Europe. If you look at the trade statistics, we have a very significant drop in trade of goods and services with the UK from a German perspective. This is down to a result of supply chain issues because of COVID, yes, but is it also because of trade barriers that were put in place because of Brexit? We have a new customs border now between the European Union and the UK, which makes it more difficult, more expensive to export and import goods from Germany to the UK. And we have a free trade agreement that does not take into account services. So many professional services that are provided from, for example, German engineers, German architects, German lawyers are not regarded anymore in the UK as it was in the past. So that is also a barrier that is in place. And the expectation is from many of the German voters is that we continue to negotiate this free trade agreement to improve it, to include a lot more industries, a lot more sectors, to improve how we trade with the UK going forward.
Thank you. Can you briefly touch on the attitudes of the three candidates for Chancellor on how they see relationship with the UK based on their maybe things that they've said ahead of the actual UK leaving the EU? Or
So the CDU candidate, Conservative Party, Armin Laschet, I think he's a very traditional politician that values relationships with France and the United Kingdom. I think he would be focusing on bilateral relationships between Germany and the UK very much, especially after Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan is actually a change in foreign policy for Germany. You can't rely on the US anymore as before, even under a new president. And the UK, because of its defense power, will play a very important strategic role also for Europe's defense going forward. And I think the next Chancellor for Germany will focus on strong bilateral relations with the UK, and Armin Laschet would definitely continue to do that. If we become the only second realistic option is to have a Labour, so an SPD, a Labour Chancellor in Germany, it would be Olaf Scholz. And I think if we get a left-wing German government under Olaf Scholz, it will depend which third political party will join the SPD and the Greens. If it is the German Liberal Party, the FDP, then I have no doubts that that bilateral attempt to improve relationships or maintain relationships in the UK will continue. If the SPD and the Greens choose the left-wing party in Germany as their coalition partner, then I have my doubts if the UK will play a very big role in foreign policy going forward, given their party strategy on leaving NATO, de-escalating Germany's position in war zones around the world. So that could actually, I think, damage German-UK relations if the left-wing party joins the German government after the federal elections at the end of September.
Thank you. That's really helpful. We've all mentioned this in passing. Obviously, Merkel's standing down, and Tanya gave us a really helpful overview at the beginning about what we see as Merkel's legacy. But I was wondering, Christian, if you could give us your view on what Merkel's swan song is in terms of what she's leaving behind.
Sorry, it was me. Give me the question again. I didn't get it really.
The legacy of Merkel as she's standing down, and maybe what impact that will have on German politics going forward, given the steady hand that Tanya referred to.
Yeah, the steady hand. That was a thing that worked really hard, very good in Germany. But that was also a part of the criticus, because I think we need to change like a kind of polity after 16 years. But I would love to come back to what Alex said because of the left wing. We have also I think you have that in UK also. We have kind of a little bit more radical parties, and that is on the right wing side is the AfD, but nobody wants to have a coalition with them. So that has no chance to lead. But on the left wing side, we have that they are called the lefts right now. They came up after the reunion of the two Germanys, and so they are like based on a socialist themes. Let's say that, and that's why they are also against like defense policy, against they want to be together in the Russian part or in the ex-Soviet part, and they have like a more radical themes, but still most of them are kind of like in economic places. I would say they're not that radical as you would expect. We have like state policy, state governments where they are in. And of course it is different, but it's not that hard as you would imagine. So that's what I want to say to that part, sorry.
Tanya, did you have anything to add to your comments earlier about Merkel's legacy and what that could mean for Germany?
Yeah, I think Merkel's legacy is right now also a result of her 16-year governing era, is also how the political landscape looks right now in Germany. Just as Christian said, we have a left-wing party that came from after the reunion of Germany, reunification, and but now we also have the AfD, and critics say this is because Merkel moved into the middle and more into a social direction with the conservatives. There was a gap, and this was filled with this new right-wing party. But what also means we have two new kids on the block, and this is also an effect that I just mentioned before. It is much more difficult to create a stable government, and there we come to the three-party coalition that we very likely will face. So all governing is really difficult. Another effect of her is, and that was also one of her secrets of success, is that she often conquered the topics of the other parties. This is also why everyone says she moved into the middle. And this also means that all parties that are now in the race do have to struggle with their profile. When you look at her own party, the Christian Democrats, this was just like they offered Merkel, and so they were voted. But the Christian Democrats and their vision for Germany, they really struggled to create this kind of vision for Germany. When you look at the Social Democrats, which were coalition partners in the current and the legislation period before, they did good governmental work. They had a lot of successes, but they did not benefit in the eyes of the people in it. And also the Green Party, but they recovered with the Friday for Future, the climate change discussion. They lost the topic when Merkel just decided after Fukushima to step back to phase out the nuclear energy. So all parties that are in the race now are a bit weak regarding their strong profile. And this is actually a legacy coming now that she's still in place as Chancellor, and we now have the election, so it was really difficult for all of them to create a strong profile. And for the future, I think any government that will come up in Germany will benefit from the solid and good relationships Merkel created worldwide, the reputation that Germany has as a mediator, as someone who is looking for compromises and consents. And as you see, the candidates, maybe not the green one, but the two who are likely to be the new chancellors, they will go this way on. So I would expect that Germany remains an important and reliable party and partner for the European partners as well as the international ones.
Thank you. I've always been looking for a good book recommendation on Angela Merkel, by the way. So if any of our panelists have one, please send it my way. I have taken up far too many of the questions, so I'm going to open the floor. Do we have a question from Chris White? So if you could come off mute, Chris, you'll be invited to, but don't worry about camera because it will be off, and you can ask the question to the directly to the panelists.
Thanks very much, Tiffany. I'm just really interested in how Germany's broader foreign policy might change after the elections, particularly with regard to countries like China and Russia. It's been really interesting to see how closely Germany's ties with China economically have been over the last few months and years. And I just wonder whether that might change with a change of government in Germany.
Who would like to take that one first? I'm looking at Christian.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing as I said before in other themes. We have like the two main guys that are candidating. They will continue the policy of Merkel in both cases. Like she always stood in speaking terms. Like even with China, where there were like many let's say problems, she still stood in speaking terms. I'm absolutely sure that Armin Laschet would do the same. So the Conservative Party would act like the same. And in the SPD, Olaf Scholz will also like go in the same way, I would say. Especially with Russia, we have a situation that the Social Democrats in Germany, they are pretty much pro-Russia still. Most of them like support the friendship, let's say partnership and friendship between those two countries. That is a real difference in between the Greens. The Greens, they criticize very hard the Russian system, the autocrats, the war with Ukraine, the taking of the Crimea. And they had like hard and tough positions against Russia. And they will set up a new panel, like criticizing harder. And I think that's the same thing with China, because like the human rights and the civil rights especially are a big topic of the Green movement. So that will change a lot, because like maybe it could come up that these speaking terms would close for a while or would be worst. That's a different I would see. And you have to see like, I can't imagine right now a government without the Green Party, because like every other parties could be out. The only way that could happen again is that we have like the big coalition, so SPD and CDU again, maybe with a third party like the Liberals again, but without you won't win. Yeah, you need more than 50%. And actually, then you would laugh about the voters, because people like the Greens will have around 20%, maybe a bit less, but there's a strong voice of the Greens, especially in the younger movements. So everybody would think that they would join the new government. And then they will have they will ask for more trouble with Russia, for more civil rights, and for more human rights, especially also in China.
Thank you. Alex, do you want to touch briefly on what the business community is asking for? Obviously, Chris touched upon the economic relationship between Germany and China.
Yes, sure. In my view, what the German government under Angela Merkel always understood was that we have a lot more leverage on defining foreign policies, also foreign economic relationships, if we use the firepower of the European Union. If we engage with our European friends and partners, with our EU member states, and form a combined view on how we should define foreign policies. And I think that was one of the milestones of Angela Merkel's foreign policies. That's something, by the way, the UK never understood, or at least the Tory government never understood how to use that leverage within the European Union. So if you then understand that a lot of governments in Europe are disappointed by the US government at the moment, then you realize that there is a wish that the European Union becomes a bit more independent in terms of their economic position in the world, in terms of their foreign policy position in the world. And then you understand that ultimately that means a detachment from the US, not significant, but a slight detachment from the US towards a more detached position to China. And I think that is something that Angela Merkel tried to do over the last 8 years. And I'm pretty sure that this will continue under a conservative German government or under a Labour German government.
Thank you. We've got another question. So if Joe Cooper could come off mute and ask a question. And Joe, if you could specify who you'd like to ask first, and then if anyone wants to come in, they're welcome to.
Thanks, Steph. Just in terms of a question sort of to the panel more broadly, I guess of one of the big issues in UK politics at the minute, and especially looking ahead to the COP26 conference in November, is sort of on climate change and on the different parties' response to it. So I'd just be interested to get your perspectives on kind of how big an issue this has been in the latest round of German elections. Sort of thinking in particular sort of in relation to, I know there's a lot of sort of really serious flooding in sort of mainland Europe earlier in the summer. But kind of how big an issue has sort of climate change and environmental policy more generally been as part of these elections?
Tanya, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, actually, also with the fleet in the summer, it became more and more clear. It was already top agenda for the Germans as well as for the politics that climate change is a top priority for the next years. So there is also in the programs of the parties clearly committed that this is a top priority. And if you look at the targets that everyone has defined, there is particularly between CDU and SPD a clear commitment of the Paris climate targets. And both parties said climate neutrality in Germany in 2045. They want to achieve. The Green are a bit more eager in their objectives. The really important thing regarding climate change is which way to go. And I mentioned that in the very beginning. The Green Party goes into we need to revolutionize our industry, the way we live, the way how our life looks like. Cars is not the right future. We have to remove them or change them much faster into electric. Automotive. And on the other hand, when you look at the conservatives and the liberals, they rather focus on it must be more moderate, not revolutionary, moderate, and it must be based on technology. So this is, so let's say the target and the commitment on climate change is in the wider and the most important parties more or less the same, but it is a big discussion about which way to go. And then this is also when I just mentioned cars and traffic. You see also that the people are concerned about a too revolutionary change by the Green Party. And so a lot of rather support the moderate way to understand, by understanding that, for example, the automotive industry is in a big transition, in a big change, but it is also the economic backbone of Germany. So everybody knows that. And then there is other realities in Germany where people just need cars. Just to take this as an example. So climate change is and will be a top priority in any kind of a constellation. The question will be which way to go to really achieve the targets that everyone set.
Thank you, Tanya. I promised that I would keep it to time, but I'm just going to ask one more question to Sabina. We've got the election on the 26th of September. What should we be looking for from a UK perspective? Obviously, it's very different from our own system of elections. So can you just give us a very top line of what we should be looking for and how it works? And then I will let everyone say quick closing remarks if they have any.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just briefly picking up on the kind of climate discussion, I think what will be particularly interesting and something to look out for will be the different coalition constellations. Just because I think what we've seen in the UK is that COP26 is kind of all everybody talks about. It is actually something that people internationally also pick up on. I don't think your everyday person necessarily, understands that this is the kind of milestone. But again, Joe Biden picked up on it yesterday, while standing in a flooded area of his own country. So it'll be a huge thing for politicians. And obviously, I think for young people as well, climate change is a huge issue that has to be tackled. I think Christian mentioned it earlier. Obviously, Germany has to update its climate law by the end of the year to set out a net zero target, which we already have. What we've seen in the UK, though, is that we see more and more ambitious targets, but then I think action isn't quite keeping up with that. And actually, so this kind of links to your question about how the electoral system works, because I think if we are looking at a system in which we have got 3 different coalition partners, some which, as Tanya very eloquently described, are looking to be slightly more gung-ho than the others, I think what we're at risk of seeing is a slight bit of gridlock, and that actually the German government, who are generally quite happy to set a target and then work towards that, might find themselves in a situation where they inevitably can't quite action to work towards their targets. But I mean, just to explain that, I mean, we touched on the fact that there is a mixed member proportional representation system. Alex also explained, so you've got 2 votes. So the first vote is on your local MP. The second one is for a party, so not a single candidate, and then they get allocated proportionally to that. I think what will also be interesting to look at is the size of the Bundestag. So generally, based on both lists, you then send 299 members on a proportional basis. But I think in the last round, we have seen the system balloon to, I think, about 709 seats. I think some people are talking about the fact that now it might balloon to up to 800. So it'll also depend a little bit on how many MPs there will be. And so depending on that, the constellations and how many seats are allocated to the different parties will be incredibly interesting to look at. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about the constellations. So I think a Jamaica coalition, which is the black, yellow, green, can't quite be ruled out, but I think we've already discussed that the greens are almost in every constellation. So I think their sort of focus will be something to basically look out for. So if you read any manifesto, I think we've all on this panel been very aligned on the fact that, if you only read one, read the green one. And yeah, I think, as we mentioned, I mean, depending on how powerful they become in the future government, I think it links in quite nicely to the European objectives that have been articulated. I mean, I think both at a general EU level, the different priorities include building a climate neutral, green, fair, social Europe. The Commission priorities in particular include a European Green Deal. And that will have loads of implications. I mean, we see it in the UK as well for electric vehicles or micromobility or how that impacts on carbon heavy industry. And I think that'll be really fascinating to see almost. I think maybe someone else can explain this in a bit more detail, but I think the Autobahn and the limits on how fast you can drive is going to, I mean, that is already one of the big headline grabbers, but it's just one example of where I think climate action that touches on actual humans will need to be taken. I mean, in the UK, we have the debate on climate adaptations to our homes. So I think those are the kind of parallels that we'll see. And I think those are also the areas where both governments will work very closely together, the UK and Germany, both on a European platform, but also bilaterally, given that we're in a post-Brexit world. But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see exactly how that pans out.
Thank you. Does anyone have any closing remarks on that I haven't managed to ask questions on, or that you suddenly thought based on the conversation? Alex has come on.
I would say at the very end, watch the Liberals, watch the FDP. They will be the kingmaker. There will be no German government without the FDP, and they can basically pick in which direction German policy will go in the next 4 years.
Thank you, Alex. Over to Christian. You're on mute, Christian. We knew there would be one.
Yeah, two things I would love to say. Yeah, the speed limit is a real big theme in Germany because we are worldwide famous for our speed hats, for our Autobahn and like driving fast with German cars. Okay, that's a big theme. But what I would love to say in the end is, look at Angela Merkel. She was like the second powerful people in the world. She was called by Forbes. She was always the most powerful woman of the world. And what is really remarkable, if you would put her up again in Germany for being voted, I'm pretty sure she would have been voted next time. And she by herself decided not to go there. And that is a really remarkable. Germans, most of the Germans still love her. Of course, there are people who are fed up with her policy, but they still love her. And she just has, she has the biggest results for being loved in a political way. And that is still absolutely remarkable. After 16 years, from a girl that has never been into politics, she started as a speaker, a press speaker.
I think it's something that global politicians can only dream of, right? To enter and leave on a high is, especially after that length of time, is considerable.
If I may, I know I wasn't picked for the question about what Merkel's legacy was, but I would just love to chip in just before we end on the fact that she has had a huge impact as a female leader in particular. I think a few people have picked this up already, but as I mentioned also, there are lots of people in Germany, little girls who have never known a different chancellor. And I think for, as role models for girls all over the world, she has had a huge impact. And lots of those Germans have grown up in an era defined by stability and growth, and everything is about to change. But Merkel's reputation has really been quite remarkable. I mean, I think YouGov had a poll out looking at her sort of rating across European countries. Now, interestingly, she only has a low rating of about 15 in Britain, but all over the place, she's incredibly highly regarded. So I think anyone is going to try and step into her shoes has got big shoes to fill.
Now it was my turn to be on mute. Tanya, final word to you, and then I'll close the session. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I just can say again, this is a trend-setting election that we have in front of us, and it is exciting. So stay tuned, and we will see how the outcome goes. And then it will be really interesting also when you see the outcome, who will govern with who, how the coalition will look like, then to really make also an outlook of what will happen, what can be expected from Germany. But I'm very sure that Germany remains a reliable partner in Europe as well as internationally.
Thank you. And a huge thank you to all four of you for your contributions and your insights. It's been really interesting. And I know I've hogged a lot of the questions, but there was a lot to get through. I'm sure we'll be speaking to all of you again after the election. So do, in the audience, pay close attention to what's going on, and also do feel free to get in touch with either ourselves or Tanya in the SEC Newgate Germany office if you have any further questions. But for now, thank you very much and have a lovely day.
Yeah. Thank you too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.